Look at Manoa, Saunders Hall, where rooftop wind is being installed. Look at concentrated solar power. We will examine electric vehicles, talk with Carlito Caliboso. We then look at climate change and the likely impacts to Hawaii. But we start off with biofuels. There's currently a proposal to take tens of thousands of acres of state land.
And one of the reasons the legislature put into the law allowing the department to do direct negotiations with renewable energy producers was because back in 2002, it was a policy call by the legislature that if we want renewable energy, we need to be able to have this opportunity to do direct negotiations to move them forward. Yes, they needed something from the board in a vote to be able to take to their lenders in this very difficult capital market to say we're making progress. Similarly, we would be asking them or anybody else who comes to us for a land lease to meet specific benchmarks so we can be assured that they're making progress towards production.
Let me ask you, of the 37,000 acres that was discussed for sun fuels, how much of the 37 is unencumbered land?
You know, I'd have to go back and take a look at the exhibit. I think there was about 3,000 acres that overlapped with the Hamakua lands that they had identified that were vacant. I think the remainder were either in leases or RPs,
so 3,000
agricultural lands.
And then of the 23,000 that was being discussed for HDE, how many of that is unencumbered?
My understanding is they were trying to identify all unencumbered lands. The problem that we have is that when we're looking at our records, unless we go out and ground truth it, we may not be able to verify whether it's unencumbered or not. And so they were trying to identify that, and they knew that they had to do some more due diligence. But they did not want to, they were looking at vacant unencumbered lands.
Would you agree with me that it's in the interest of the staff of the Department of Land and Natural Resources to know the answers to those questions when that kind of...
No, and we had done that initial due diligence in looking through our records, looking through the tax records, working with our local staff on site, but it's, you know, we knew that we had to do more to get to any final identification of the lands, because there's also some concerns that were raised about, you know, is some of it more appropriate for the timber industry and hardwood growth? There were certain areas where you had old hardwood, and they wanted to make sure that that first harvest release was going to go for the timber industry and, you know, other details.
Okay, so let's take your number for the sake of the discussion and deal again with the 37,263 acres for sun fuels. If 3,000 of the 37,000 is unencumbered, and the board made a decision that 10,000, they made a decision for sun fuels on 10,000 acres. If all of the encumbered lands, the people who represent the encumbered lands said, no, no, we don't want any biomass energy plant on our land. What then is the next discussion? Because we had a discussion with, I think, all of the general leases and revocable permit at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And unless I misread the group, they said no. Okay? And two things come to mind. If we have a meeting at 4 o'clock to discuss with the general lessees whether or not they're willing, and they say no, then why couldn't the land board have a meeting with the general lessees and ask the same question?
Where, again, you know, the statute specifies that there are members or the qualifications of certain members to the land board, be that they come from a certain county, right? Each of the counties would have one at least.
Yes.
Okay. And so presumably the purpose or the premise for that is that you have a stronger link to the island, someone who will be more familiar with the conditions, circumstances, and the people and the concerns that they may share.
Yes.
So in this case, if if there was a possibility that perhaps in several weeks, you could have that decision making on the island where the impact, and as the chairman indicated, these are thousands of acres of land. It's public property. Where you had in testimony, lessees come and talk to you and tell you, we never knew anything about this until we read it in the paper. Where you have a staff located here on the island that deals with these lessees, that deals with the community concerns. Again, I have a difficult time understanding why you were compelled, despite the request for deferral, to feel you had to take action at that time. Even if it was to start the discussions. I mean, discussions on this have been ongoing for a while. And I'm not so sure what difference, several weeks would have made. Except it seems to me that if one of those entities needed to show to their finance people or whatever, certain progress that was being made, and if that would give them a competitive advantage, I'm not so sure that's the best process we should be following. Representative Nakashima and I, on January 14th, we'll have a forum. We're still in the process of doing it, but we think that the community needs to have a better understanding in terms of all of these entities. So at least with the first four, with respect to Sun Fuels, Trade Winds, Manoa, and Hamuko Biomass Energy, and there may be a couple more, and we'll be providing. Okay.
I wanted to kind of reinforce what Chairman Thielen said about land board meetings. But I will tell you that when I served on the land board, we did go to the neighbor islands, particularly for those issues that impacted the most. And let me tell you, those were hot and heavy meetings because you're going right into the heart of the community that's affected the most. Not the easiest situation, but to make those decisions at that time was critical for the community to understand. And the issue that I recall very specifically had to do with with Hyena on Kauai. That had been going on for years. And
today. So I would like to introduce to you the CEO and chairman of Phoenix Motorcars, Dan Elliott.
We're working to define the exact target of vehicles, but it's going to be approximately 20 to 30 vehicles, and that will happen Q1 of 2009. And then based on the outcome of that test program, we'll continue to increase the number of vehicles over here in the state of Hawaii. Yeah, the test program is probably going to be on the order of about 6 months. Maui Electric is going to have their employees use these vehicles in real-world situations. So they will drive them in their fleets that they have now, and they will use them for their typical duty cycles. From Phoenix's perspective, Phoenix Motorcars, we intend to produce 2,500 vehicles in 2009. You'll also see that rolling out into 2010, where we're going to try to ramp up to 10,000 vehicles, which is a very achievable number. Out of that, there's the first phase is this test program to make sure that the vehicles interact with the grid interacts with the vehicles.
The 10,000 is for your total fleet everywhere, right?
That's correct, yes.
How many would be in Hawaii in 2010?
We're still in discussions about that, on how many would actually come over to Hawaii. We have some pretty good incentives that the governor and the Hawaii legislature is putting together. And we'll have to see what that exact number is, but certainly we're in active communications with the electric utilities and also various fleets over here in Hawaii, and they'll tell us the number of vehicles that they demand.
About 10 years ago, we actually purchased 2 electric vehicles, including the charging stands. In fact, we still have the charging stands on Maui at Maui Electric. Unfortunately, we don't have the cars. We donated it to, I think it was a school.
How will 20 vehicles convince you whether it works or not?
Well, I think we're looking at the technology of the smart meter, how it integrates into our fleet, and how the vehicle will integrate into our fleet, and how the smart meter can monitor the data that's coming out of the powering of this unit itself, the charging. So,
And will you be using the batteries to supplement the power of the grid?
you know, at this point we have not looked at it yet, but from my discussions with Phoenix Motorcars, that's certainly a possibility. So we're hopeful that that can be done.
So right now they're made in Ontario, California. We're final assembly these and are looking to start deliveries next year. The battery chemistries in this particular vehicle are lithium titanate chemistry. Lithium ions are great batteries, but they've had a couple problems that we've noticed over the past few years. They have a tendency to heat up and combust, cause flames as we saw in laptops. And also cycle life tends to be, you know, within only a year or two you're going to need to replace it. The advances of lithium titanate allow for ideal transportation applications because you get longer cycle life, you know, 5,000 to 10,000 cycles on the batteries before they need to be replaced. And they're also chemically incapable of thermal runaway.
a good shot.
We were donated the vertical axis wind turbine at our first Earth Day that we threw at Sustainable Saunders over 2 years ago. And we have been waiting for it to be installed ever since, but we do have support from the university because it is the first of its kind to be tested on Oahu. It is bird friendly because birds see it as an opaque object so they don't fly into it, and it's virtually vibration and silent and noise free. So when you're standing next to it, you don't really feel it and you don't really hear it, and that's really some barriers that we've overcome in the wind turbine category. Plus, it can be mounted to a building.
Pardon the interruption.
My parents have been in energy for decades. They owned a large electrical contracting company in the Big Island. I'm originally from the Big Island. From an early age, I had the opportunity to work with my parents in their contracting company, and one thing that we noticed was that we were becoming more reliant on energy. For example, more computers, more air conditioning, but we weren't building power plants, and the existing energy infrastructure which we had was very unreliable. So that led me to really become interested in trying to find a solution for that problem, figure out a way for us to have a more stable, reliable energy grid for Hawaii, but also at the same time not pollute the environment. I went to school in Oregon, a very green state, and had the opportunity to work with the Environmental Protection Agency on their rollout of the Energy Star program in the early 90s. And that really made me aware and understand the types of solutions that were out there, technologically speaking. So through my experience there and working with large companies in the United States, I had the opportunity to witness what they were doing on the national landscape to save energy and also to generate energy from renewable energy resources like the sun, or even use alternative technologies like fuel cells and whatnot. So when I decided to move back to Hawaii, I wanted to bring those technologies and those solutions back here and try to help us end our addiction to imported fossil fuels.
How are we doing?
Well, we have a lot of work yet to do. The challenge is big and it requires a lot of education. It's certainly one that requires incentives at all levels, whether they be from the private sector in the form of profits, which allow companies to spur, all the way through policies, which we need government to support. So it's not a simple problem. It's not a silver bullet type problem where we can just solve overnight. I think now, especially over the last few years, we've made some significant progress, but a lot more work needs to be done here.
Why did you go with concentrated solar?
Well, the solar resource is very good in Hawaii and in the world. I mean, it's one of those resources where you know it's gonna come up. It's very reliable, unlike to some extent some of the other technology or resources like wind, which will blow when the wind is blowing. The sun will always shine, And yes, you may have things like clouds or humidity that might affect it, but for the most part, it's pretty reliable. The challenge has always been density. How do you get more energy out of your per square foot? And concentrating solar power gives you the opportunity to increase your energy density. And the other part about concentrating solar power that was very attractive to me is I like technologies that are really commercially available now. And there are many concentrating solar power projects all around the world operating flawlessly for the last 30+ years. Now, none of them have been able to be used in Hawaii successfully because of our unique environment. So that's what Sopogy set out to do, was adopt the known metrics behind concentrating solar power and develop a system that could operate here.
What are the major stumbling blocks that would prevent something like the Luz facility from being here?
One of the big challenges we had, when I got started with the technology, I actually tried to build a traditional parabolic trough here in Hawaii. We found that some of the technologies, the components of the system were manufactured by 1 or 2 companies in the world, most of them on the other side of the world. So when we had them manufactured, we had to figure out a unique way to ship them. In these fields, these large parabolic fields, they're generally very, very large, thousands of acres. And when you have a large base of project, it's a lot easier for you to figure out unique ways to ship technologies and parts, fragile parts, glass, for example, glass mirrors, glass tubes. In the case of what we had the potential for here in Hawaii, we were talking about very small projects, and that in itself created a whole new set of problems or challenges. So the glass tubes and glass mirrors were very hard to get. When we shipped them over, we put them in a container, we got them into LA, they broke. We had to get replacement parts from them. We finally got them into Hawaii. We got them got them at the pier, and we found that we didn't know how to take them out of the container. So we had to bring specialty cranes to load them into a specialty flatbed that had a kind of a unique framework system that we had to build, take it out to the project site. We needed another crane to take the technology off the trailer, put it on the project, and then build it up from there. We also learned that local contractors couldn't do the install. We thought they could because the temperatures and the pressures that these traditional systems work at are very, very high. They require a specialty license and also require specialty certifications and inspections. Something that Hawaii is not that equipped for today because we don't have a lot of boilers here. We learned that the traditional technology doesn't operate so great when it comes to things like cloudiness. Because of the high temps, these are 1,000-degree Fahrenheit type temperature systems. When you have a cloud that comes in, 1,000 degrees goes immediately down to 200 degrees. And that kind of fluctuation is bad for an engine. So we had to essentially cut the temperatures down. We learned that in the case of a storm, which is what happened to us, we had large rain downpours and high-speed winds, which eventually shattered the glass. And you see this a lot at SEGS in the Mojave Desert. High-speed winds comes through the field, blows out the mirrors, and they have to replace the mirrors. The difference, of course, is that you don't have that happening frequently in the middle of the desert, whereas here in Hawaii, you can have that every month, possibly. Work at those items and try to find solutions for that. And that's how we develop what we call micro CSP. It's a smaller scale parabolic trough designed for markets like Hawaii, where you've got maybe in a more active climate. For example, the project on a rooftop that you may not be able to bring a crane to. So these technologies needed to be more compact, flat packed, so that a contractor, for example, could use a hand truck or carry the technology to the roof and assemble it there. Those factors contributed to our invention of Sopogy's micro CSP technologies.
I grew up here in Hawaii, went to school mostly in Mililani, and went to college here, University of Hawaii, the College of Business Administration, graduated back in 1984. And I went to the University of Hawaii Law School, the William S. Richardson School of Law, and I graduated there in 1991.
Did you always know you were going to be an attorney?
No, probably not until after undergraduate, and I decided to become an attorney, go to law school and become an attorney.
What motivated you to do that?
Just after being out of school for a little bit, I wanted more challenges and wanted to go on learning, and being an attorney was a good challenge.
And are you married?
Yes, I'm married.
And what does your wife do?
My wife is a computer specialist at Bank of Hawaii in information technology.
And do you have children?
I have 2 children. One son, he's in college now at University of Hawaii at Hilo, and I have a daughter. She's a sophomore at Mililani High School.
Okay. What do you see as your vision?
My vision now, and it's been like this for a while too, is that well, the Public Utilities Commission has a lot of responsibility, and as a commission that regulates public utilities, we implement state law and we regulate public utilities, including electric companies, as you know. And my vision is to implement that state law, state policy, and trying to move the state and electricity generation to something that's more sustainable. We've been on oil for a long time, since the 70s, and that has not changed, and it might take a while to change that, but we need to do that in a way that's balanced, that's in a wise way, to try to move generation and our portfolio of fuels and diversity of electricity generation in a way that really makes sense, so that we're not vulnerable to the spikes in oil that we had this year, spikes in oil prices this year, and so that we can have a more secure future.
And do you like your role in your public service now that you're working on behalf of the government?
Actually, yes. It's quite a challenge. I mean, you can never please everybody. We have to act in a way that's balanced, and you have to listen to all sides, the consumers, the environmental proponents, the government, other phases of government, portions of government, and of course even the electric utilities that have to be on the ground and keep the lights on.
When your term is up, when is your term up?
My term is up in June 2010.
Would you want to be reappointed?
I am interested in being reappointed.
Okay. Do you see something beyond the public utilities?
For myself?
Yes.
Of course. I always like to keep my options open. As you know, I'm an attorney by trade and practice. I want to keep my options open and possibly going back to being an attorney. I was a transactional attorney, specializing in business matters. I could go and practice regulatory law, public utility law, after a given time away from practicing before the commission. I could do other things, maybe go into business or other endeavors. So I'm always thinking ahead, but right now this is all I'm doing.
I don't have time to go into the science behind why we choose a nice round number of 1 meter of sea level rise by the end of this century, but there is science behind it. And so if we take this science and we map the 1 meter contour line in our business district, what you see here is the blue line that identifies the 1 meter contour line under a meter higher of sea level at high tide. This doesn't mean that this whole area seaward of the blue line is going to be underwater. It means that it's the very highly vulnerable area of our community. This is the area that is going to be vulnerable to rise in the groundwater table, which floats on seawater. The groundwater table goes up and down with the tides. The groundwater table even reflects large swell events that we see coming in on the shoreline. And so it's intimately connected to sea level. And as sea level goes up, the groundwater table is going to begin to crop out on the land surface. Our storm drains that drain rainwater into the ocean are going to back up with seawater at high tide and eventually permanently. They're already doing this, in fact. And portions of this area inside the blue line will be vulnerable to increase in fresh water during rainfall, increase in seawater during high tides. And exactly which area is subject to which hazard needs to be the product of increased research. We need to get a better handle on our groundwater table in these vulnerable areas. And we need to monitor the groundwater table and find out where it's going to crop out first so that we can begin to map those areas out and do something about it in terms of increasing the resiliency of our community. Is this unrealistic? No. This car is driving through 100% salt water in Mapunapuna in the summertime, and it hasn't rained for 2 months. And the workers that work in these buildings report seeing baby hammerhead sharks that swim around in this pool on occasion. They come up through the storm drains at high tide. And these residents, these commercial areas keep a tide chart inside, even though they're over a mile from the ocean. So Mapunapuna is the industrial area that is immediately Mauka of the airport region. So this is happening in our community now, and one of the aspects of sea level rise that we tend to ignore is that it's very slow, it'll be sneaking up on us, and we tend to assimilate it into our daily lives without really realizing what's happening.